Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. And Nan, I am so excited about this particular episode.
I know, you've been texting about this. I'm so excited.
Well, and the theme of this episode is we've seen a lot of movies doing research for various episodes throughout the year.
Yep.
And this is sort of our year wrap up of some of the biggest and best scene-stealing moments in films. And these are people that you may or may not know, and we want to make sure you know about them.
Yes. Can I just dive right in?
Yeah. Who's your first one?
All right, my first one, I think everybody knows Mildred Natwick, but Mildred Natwick as Ethel Banks in Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park, 1967, is my first scene-stealing performance.
And what a great way to kick it off.
Oh my gosh. Just a little bit of background on her. She actually didn't start working in films until she was 35 with a role in John Ford's The Long Voyage Home, 1940. Now, prior to that, and I think this is maybe why I love her so much, she is a complete theater baby. She has been featured in or starring throughout her lifetime in some 40 Broadway productions. She was nominated for 2 Tony Awards over the years for The Waltz of the Toreadors, 1957, and the musical 70 Girls 70, 1972. But she actually originated the role of Mrs. Banks in the original Broadway production of Barefoot in the Park in 1963, directed by none other than Mike Nichols and starring Robert Redford and Elizabeth Ashley. Mike Nichols won the Tony Award for Best Director, but surprisingly, Mildred Natwick was not even nominated.
Outrageous.
I know, it was outrageous. Now, the film version began shooting in 1966, and it was directed by Gene Saks. A little bit of a brief synopsis here for those who haven't seen the film or the play. Corey Bratter, in the film, played by Jane Fonda, is this free-spirited young woman married to uptight young lawyer Paul, played by Robert Redford. They've just spent 6 glorious days at the Plaza Hotel on their honeymoon. They're now starting their life in earnest in this 5-story walk-up apartment. And they live next to some very interesting neighbors, including Victor Velasco, Charles Boyer, this quirky, flamboyant, bohemian type known as the Blackbeard of 48th Street. I had forgotten that.
That's right. I forgot that too.
And Corey thinks that Victor Velasco is the perfect setup for her mother, Ethel, played by Mildred Natwick. The film centers on the conflicts that play out in this new marriage, but Mildred Natwick makes it about so much more as we see this relationship with Victor Velasco really kind of parallel that of Corey and Paul. Of course, we know Fonda and Redford have incredible chemistry together. They work together in many films, and they're perfectly suited for the roles of Corey and Paul. And Charles Boyer is spot on as Velasco with the right amount of that suave, sexy, life of the party Lothario. But when you see the performance of Mildred Natwick, she is a true masterclass in comedic prowess. Not only is she able to mine absolutely every laugh that Neil Simon has written, I would argue that she finds more than what is on the page. And she does it without once overstepping into caricature. She never resorts to a note of shrillness or judgment, but rather she finds a way to be this put-together woman of a certain age, complete with a Bergdorf Goodman suit. I'm guessing on the department store. That would seem right?
That would seem totally right for her.
With her matching purse and her beauty parlor coiffed hair.
And nice pearls.
Exactly. But at the same time, she's able to play this completely bewildered, slightly shocked, off-center lady of New York. And on top of all of that, she never fails to be this loving, caring, sympathetic mother with both her daughter and her son-in-law. I mean, with a look, a sigh, a sputter, she just fills the screen with such specificity you can't take your eyes off her. I like to think of her as a juggler who doesn't just have 3 balls in the air. She's got like 6 or 7 of them.
Oh, well said. That's so true.
So when you watch the scene in particular, when she climbs those stairs.
It's my favorite moment she has in the whole movie.
You've got to watch that scene. Her physicality is extraordinary. Just her first entrance into the apartment, she bangs into the side of the door. The variety she finds as she grows more and more out of breath, she just doesn't miss a beat. Here's a short clip from that scene.
Hello, Mother.
Hello, Mom.
I can't breathe.
Take it easy, Mother.
I can't catch my breath.
You should have rested, Mom.
I did, but there were always more stairs.
Paul, help her.
What's the step?
More stairs?
Mother, would you like a glass of water?
Oh, thank you, dear. I can't swallow yet.
Here, sit down, Mom.
Oh, my.
It's not that high, Mother.
I know, dear, it's not bad, really. What is it, 9 flights?
No, it's 5. We don't count the front stoop.
I didn't think I'd make it. If I'd known the people on the 3rd floor, I'd have gone to visit them.
Oh, gee, Mother, what a pleasant surprise.
I'm not staying. Aunt Harriet's honking the horn for me in 10 minutes. Just one good look around, that's all. I'm not sure I'm coming back.
You can't tell anything yet. I wish you'd arrived after the furniture had come.
Don't worry. I have a marvelous imagination.
Well?
Corey, baby, it's beautiful.
You hate it.
No, I love it. It's a charming apartment.
Then watch her in the scene in Victor Velasco's apartment with Corey and Paul, where she tries to pop the fried eel, and she's already had a martini or 2. I mean, again, never once overplays, always hits the exact right note, playing multiple things at once. It's no wonder she was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her portrayal, losing to Estelle Parsons in Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, don't get me started.
Now, prior to this film, to set the stage a little bit for her career, she set the bar so high in the famous Pellet with the Poisons in the Vessel with the Pestle tongue twister in Danny Kaye's The Court Jester, 1956.
I forgot about that.
And other film roles, including Hitchcock's The Trouble with Harry in 1955. Of course, she had a very successful time on television, won an Emmy for The Snoop Sisters, 1973-74.
I love that show. I always said somebody should remake that show.
I think they should
with
too.
2 great older actresses.
Right? And you'll recall that was an offshoot of the TV movie, and we love those movies of the week.
Yep.
Do Not Fold, Spindle, or Mutilate with Helen Hayes.
I think Paulette Goddard was in that also, I believe.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Her final film performance was in Dangerous Liaisons 1988 with Glenn Close, Michelle Pfeiffer, and John Malkovich. Mildred Natwick died of cancer on October 24th, 1994 at the age of 89.
Aw.
Yeah.
What a career. What
I
a
know.
life.
Yeah.
Loved her.
Love her.
Okay, so my first scene stealer that you should know about is absolutely one of my favorite film performances of all time.
Oh, I can't wait.
And it is Joanna Barnes playing the uppity society girl Gloria Upson in the 1958 comedy Auntie Mame.
Oh, Steve, I love that choice.
Oh my God. And you know, of course, Auntie Mame was dominated by the brilliant performance of Roz Russell, who plays Mame Dennis, who's this free-spirited socialite who believes that the world is a banquet and most poor sons of bitches are starving to death, in her words. The film was directed by Morton DaCosta, and what really happens that changes Mame's life is she becomes the guardian of her orphaned young nephew, Patrick. And she really embraces Patrick as her own, and she exposes him to this rich, diverse culture of her own world. What a great upbringing this kid has.
Right.
Rosin Russell originated the role on Broadway, and in a rare move, she actually got to perform the part in the film version. There's so many great performances in this film, including Forrest Tucker as Beauregard, the Kentucky colonel who she marries, and
He's wonderful.
whose propensity for photography does not end well for him.
No, it doesn't. That's
And then
right.
there's her best friend, Vera, who's played by Coral Brown, and she's this boozy stage actress. And then there's Fred Clark, who we love on this podcast, who we featured before. He plays the stuffy banker. And there's Peggy Cass as Miss Gooch, the wallflower assistant who learns to live in so many ways, as you'll learn. And there's even Jan Hanslick, who played young Patrick. Quite a scene stealer. However, nobody, and I mean nobody, steals a scene in this movie quite the way the hilarious Joanna Barnes does. As Gloria Upson, this vapid, snobby, and racist society girl.
Just say it.
Who, much to Mame's horror, becomes engaged to Mame's now adult nephew Patrick, now played by Roger Smith, who many people may not know was Anne Margaret's real-life husband. Blonde, beautiful, and oh so pretentious, Barnes as Gloria is a revelation. And she was a natural to play this blue-blooded society girl because she was one. She was raised in Boston. She was a debutante. She graduated from Smith College before seeking an acting career. Her family was in the Social Register of Boston. I mean, she was this girl.
She really was, yeah.
Well, Barnes's Gloria Upson, she doesn't come in until the last 30 minutes of the movie. She's only in 2 scenes, and by God, she slays it, and you never forget her.
She really does.
She dominates the scene, and she defies you to watch anything in that scene except for her.
Yep.
From her aggressively shaking hands with Mame, from her Bryn Mawr lockjaw speech, we know we're in for a fun ride with this one. And watching Rosalind Russell react to her obnoxious ways is comic gold.
Yes, yes.
And we knew Gloria and Mame were not going to be braiding each other's hair anytime soon. Especially when Gloria walks in, takes in Mame's apartment, and says, "Oh my, what a stunning apartment. Books are awfully decorative, don't you think?" You could just watch it on Mame's face. You knew this is not going to work for Mame. Her comments go from insipid and vapid to much darker and more disturbing when she starts talking about her parents' neighborhood being completely restrictive, which, of course, we know what that means back in the day.
Right, exactly.
Well, this causes Mame to retort, "Well, I'll get a blood test."
Oh, gosh.
And just the way she says her school is absolutely top drawer, you get the feeling that top drawer means white.
Yeah.
You have no doubt about it.
Right.
When Mame invites Gloria and her equally snobby parents, who are brilliantly played, by the way, by Willard Waterman and Lee Patrick, Mame invites them to see her apartment, and she purposely invites all of her avant-garde, free-spirited bohemian friends because she wants to scare the bejesus out of this conservative Connecticut couple.
Yes, yes.
She wants to do anything to make sure that this marriage does not happen.
Right.
And just as Patrick and Mame are sharing this very tender moment, Gloria decides to upstage them both with this absolutely vapid and hysterical monologue about a ping pong tournament she and her friend Bunny Bixler played at the club. Let's just take a listen.
Miss Burnside, you could practically write a whole book about what happened to me.
Well, I beg your pardon, Gloria?
I said you could practically write a whole book about what happened to me.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Bunny Bixler and I were in the semifinals, the very semifinals, mind you, of the ping pong tournament at the club. And this ghastly thing happened. We were both playing way over our heads, and the score was 29-28. And we had this really terrific volley, and I stepped back to get this really terrific shot. And I stepped on the ping pong ball. Well, I just squashed it to bits. And then Bunny and I ran to the closet of the game room to get another ping pong ball, and the closet was locked. Imagine. We had to call the whole thing off. Well, it was ghastly. Well, it was just ghastly.
As you can tell from the clip, obviously, Mame knew that Gloria was all wrong for Patrick, and she made him eventually realize it as well. And while Gloria didn't win Patrick in the end, she absolutely won our hearts, and she essentially stole scenes from Rosalind Russell. No easy feat, let me tell you.
Right.
Now, for her portrayal of Gloria Upson, Barnes received universal critical praise and was nominated for a Golden Globe as Most Promising Newcomer Female. Her competition that year was Tina Louise, Nancy Kwan, and Carol Lindley.
Okay.
Nice little group to be amongst.
Yes.
Auntie Mame won a Golden Globe for Best Comedy, and Rosalind Russell won as lead actress in a comedy. Joanna Barnes would later play another very snobby socialite type in the Disney classic The Parent Trap, 1961.
And that is just, she's brilliant in that film as well.
It's almost like if Gloria Upson grew up a little bit.
Yes.
And
she's a little bit older.
And she's a little bit older,
more,
and she's going to get her hooks in another millionaire.
And a little meaner.
Oh, totally meaner.
Yeah.
Well, she played a character named Vicki Robinson, and she is this gold-digging society girl who tries to come between Brian Keith and Maureen O'Hara. and unleashes the wrath of their twin daughters, played by Haley Mills.
Yes.
And now, also in the 1998 remake, she plays Vicky again, only now she's the mother of the gold digger, Meredith Blake, played by Elaine Hendricks. So she took it full circle.
Yep.
What I find interesting is in 1961, she was actually kicked out of the Boston Social Register because she had the audacity to become an actress. They don't do acting in the Boston Social Registry, apparently.
Note taken.
I know. You know, she also appeared in Spartacus in 1960 with Kirk Douglas, Goodbye Charlie with Debbie Reynolds and Tony Curtis. One of my favorites, Don't Make Waves in 1967 with Tony Curtis, Claudia Cardinal, and Sharon Tate, and a slew of TV. Later in life, she became a writer, wrote novels, she penned a book on home decorating, and she passed away at 87 on April 20th, 2022.
Well, she's fabulous. Great choice.
Just fabulous. I love her so much. And if you haven't seen the movie, just watch it and watch her. Just wait for that last 30 minutes of the movie.
All right, my next performance to watch is BEAH Richards as Mrs. Prentice in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967.
Can I just say, until just this very second, I thought it was BEAH Richards.
Me too.
It's BEAH.
It was only after much research that I realized it's BEAH.
So those of you who are going to write in about that, check it out.
It's BEAH. Now, we did speak about BEAH, and we did say her name incorrectly in episode 61 about 1960s films. She portrays abortionist Mama Kaliba in The Heat of the Night, 1967. I would say if you saw In the Heat of the Night and you saw her in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, if she only did those two films, it would be enough to show you the astonishing range that she had as an actress. Just a brief overview of her. She was born in Mississippi in 1920. She graduated from Dillard University in New Orleans in 1948. 2 years later, she moved to New York City. In 1955, she starred off-Broadway as an 84-year-old grandmother in Take a Giant Step. She was just 35 years old. I mean, that says a lot right there.
Yeah.
She also appeared in the original productions of Pearly Victorious, The Miracle Worker, and A Raisin in the Sun. She was not only, though, an incredible actress, but she was a poet, a playwright, an author, and an activist. Her one-woman verse performance piece, some of which you can find on YouTube, entitled A Black Woman Speaks. Ooh, it is a powerful admonition and cry to white women about their role in oppressing women of color. It's searing. There's also a wonderful Peabody Award-winning documentary about her life and career entitled BEAH, A Black Woman Speaks. This doc was created by Lisa Gay Hamilton.
Oh, we love her.
Wonderful actress in her own right. So Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Real brief synopsis. Returning to San Francisco, her home, from a trip to Hawaii, Joey Drayton, a young white woman, played by Catherine Houghton, brings home her black fiancé, Dr. John Prentice, played by Sidney Poitier, to meet her liberal and socially prominent parents, Spencer Tracy in his last film, and Katharine Hepburn as her mother. But Catherine's father doesn't exactly approve, and when Dr. Prentice's parents, played by Roy E. Glenn Sr. and BEAH Richards, when they arrive for dinner, the conflict over the young couple's impending marriage becomes the centerpiece of the film. The two fathers oppose the marriage, the two mothers approve, and there's a lot of supporting players in the film that have their opinions as well. This film has a great supporting cast in Cecil Calloway as the Monsignor, an old family friend, Isabel Sanford as Tilly, the family's housekeeper, and
love her.
Yes, Virginia Christine as Blue Blood. Speaking of Blue Bloods,
my favorite.
Hilary St. George, who we talked about in episode 17 of this podcast. And by the way, Catherine Houghton is the niece of Katharine Hepburn in real life. But back to BEAH Richards. I would argue that in other hands, her portrayal of Mrs. Prentice might have been that generic mother type that's forgotten or at least pushed to the side up against the likes of Hepburn and Tracy and Poitier. However, Richards not only holds her own, but she stands out in her unforgettable portrayal that builds to a sizzling power while always retaining her dignified stature and showing her deep love and care for her son. Watch her scene with Spencer Tracy when she schools him about what's right and what's wrong and reminds him of what love is about, and you can just see the strength that comes from the deep recesses of her soul and learning that she was a poet and an activist. You can see that in her performance.
Sense. Yeah, that monologue that she has with Spencer Tracy in the backyard is absolutely one of the most beautiful monologues I've ever heard.
You know what? Let's listen to a little bit of that right now.
What happens to men when they grow old? Why do they forget everything? I believe Those two young people need each other like they need the air to breathe in. Anybody can see that by just looking at them. But you and my husband you might as well be blind men. You can only see that they have a problem. But do you really know what's happened to them? How they feel about each other?
And she stands toe-to-toe with Hepburn as well in a scene where the two come to realize they're on the same page in terms of the marriage. You really believe that these are two mothers wanting the best for their children, and that's because these are two actresses who are really connected to each other, really listening to each other. Ms. Richards' eyes are just pools of pain and understanding and love. And there's a deepness to her work that you just can't really put into words. Yeah. It leaves you, in this performance in particular, with a sense of who this character is, even though the screenwriter never really tells us any of her backstory.
Oh, well said. So you really do. You get a sense of the pain that woman has endured just by watching her eyes.
Exactly. Yeah. She was nominated for an Academy Award the same year as Mildred Natwick, and we won't say who won.
Estelle Parsons.
But during her career, she garnered 2 Emmy Awards for guest roles on Frank's Place in 1988 and The Practice in 2000, which I wonder if that's where she met.
That's probably where she met Lisa Gay Hamilton. Yes.
She also received a Tony Award nomination for her performance in James Baldwin's The Amen Corner in 1965. She died on September 14th, 2000 from emphysema.
Oh, what a career. I loved her when she played Eric LaSalle's mother on ER.
Oh,
God,
yeah.
She was so good.
Yeah. All right, I think it's time for this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
Well, the pop quiz question of the day is, and in the second half of our show, we're going to be talking about Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Well, the question of the day is, who played Brick and Maggie originally in the Broadway version of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof?
Great question.
Little side question. Also, who was originally slated to play Brick in the movie, but did not get to play the role?
Okay.
And why? That's a 3-parter.
Okay, this is a 3-parter. I don't think we've ever done this before.
We're going crazy here.
We're going crazy. All right, we'll be back with the answer and more about these fabulous performances after this.
Okay, Steve and Nan will be right back, but first another stop on the Hollywood tour. One of the topics that cinephiles have enjoyed arguing about for decades is one you've probably heard yourself. Who was the best James Bond? Well, a lot of people argue the very first actor to portray Agent 007 was the best one to do it. That, of course, was Sean Connery. He made his Bond debut in Dr. No in 1962. Now, Connery played Bond an additional 5 times in Bond films. Other actors inheriting that role included George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and most recently Daniel Craig. Now, James Bond was very good at killing bad guys in all of those films, but you know the record for the fewest villains Bond ever killed? Well, that would be 1974's The Man with the Golden Gun. That was the second film to see Roger Moore as Bond. In that film, Bond killed, believe it or not, only 1 bad guy. I guess that meant more time for shaken not stirred martinis. And now back to Steve and Ann from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Welcome back, everybody. Before we get back into this episode, we wanted to give a shout out to this week's Listener of the Week from Italy. And she happens to be our biggest fan in Italy.
We're international.
I know. It's Jody Hurwitz and her Casablanca-loving Italian husband. Thank you so much for listening, Jody, and keep those emails coming.
Thank you, Jody. We loved your email. We really appreciate it.
Grazie.
Back to scene stealers that you need to know about. And boy, I've got a great one for you next.
Okay, who's next?
In the 1968 comedy film The Party, which was directed by Blake Edwards, and it reteamed him with Peter Sellers, who was his leading man in all those Pink Panther comedies. Well, they come together for this movie, and it is comic gold. I mean, Sellers is an absolute genius. We all know that.
Yes.
And in this movie, he plays Harandi V. Bakshi, a clumsy but lovable actor from India who unintentionally wrecks a Hollywood movie set and then, after erroneously being invited to the producer's house, ruins a very chic Hollywood dinner party with equal aplomb. This satirical movie really takes a swing at 1960s culture. I mean, they have this skinny dancing model named Wiggy, not to be confused with Twiggy.
Yeah.
And they had this mid-century modern house with these indoor pools and streams and elaborate panels that control everything from the lights and curtains and retractable floors above the pool. And it becomes its own character in the movie, as you will see. It also takes a stab at the pretentiousness of Hollywood with some fun archetypes like the bombastic producer, the dumb blonde starlet, and the bored executive's wife who amuses herself with Russian dancers and anything avant-garde. It's just a brilliant satire. Well, the cast was this eclectic mix of people that I love. I mean, besides Peter Sellers, we had the French singing star Claudine Longet as his love interest. And I don't know if people remember, she was once married to Andy Williams.
Oh,
and
yes.
She was infamously convicted of killing her ski instructor boyfriend in Aspen years later. We also have MGM dancer and choreographer Marge Champion in the cast. We have beefcake actor Denny Miller, Western film actress Faye McKenzie, who was once married to Steve Cochran, who we featured here on the show.
Right.
And also Carol Wayne, Johnny Carson's matinee lady.
Oh.
And finally, my favorite, Gavin MacLeod, playing the sleaziest of Hollywood producers you could ever imagine. It was a far cry from the kindly Captain Steubing on the Love Boat. Right. Gopher Doc and Isaac would not approve. Let's just say. Well, the party was originally intended to be an homage to silent movies with title cards and everything. So it was only a 63-page script that was basically just the outline for the action. So that tells you how much of this movie where the dialogue was improv. Well, after filming for one day, silent, Peter Sellers realized that he couldn't do it. He really needed to have his character have voice.
I gotta believe that must have been so hard for him.
Oh, he said it was so limiting. So he finally said, all right, let's scratch the homage to silent film. Let's make a talkie. However, they did decide to make one character in the movie silent. And it was a waiter named Levinson, played by the hilarious Steve Franken.
Oh, I love him.
And I think he literally, because I counted, he has 4 lines in the whole movie. The whole time he's silent, and he also likes to drink. So he gets increasingly drunker and drunker as this chic party progresses, but he's completely silent and usually in the background. But watch what he's doing. He conjures up the best of the silent film comedians. You see Charlie Chaplin's Little Tramp in him. You see Stan Laurel's sweetly dim, bumbling persona. I mean, he really does do a beautiful homage to these great masters of the silent films.
Wow.
He steals every single scene he's in, and sometimes he's not even the focus of the scene. He can just steal it by being in the background.
Right.
You can't take your eyes off him. You just can't wait to see what he's going to do next. Yeah, I don't think anybody has ever played drunk better. A genius at that. He's hilarious. And his pratfalls and his comic timing are incredible. There's one particular pratfall where he gets pushed into the living room with a tray full of drinks. He flies in the room, dodges people, runs up a staircase, runs down a staircase, never spills a drop. Steve Franken's waiter character also serves sort of as a Greek chorus. Like he's slightly judging this pretentious people
interesting.
as
Good
the party
point.
goes on, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Everything he does is just hilarious. From this drunk duck walk he does, to inhaling a corkscrew, to serving salad with his hands. He's just so funny. He really gives Peter Sellers a run for his money in the comedy department. And even the reviews when the movie came out, every critic commented on how he gave Peter Sellers a run for his money. A little bit about Steve Franken. He was born in New York, educated at Cornell University, and he first gained attention by playing the snobbish character of Chatsworth Osborne Jr. in the TV series The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis from 1960 to 1963, which of course that starred Dwayne Hickman and Bob Denver. And prior to the party, he appeared in films like The Americanization of Emily, 1963, with James Garner and Julie Andrews, The Time Traveler, 1964, with Preston Foster, and he guest starred in tons and tons and tons of TV shows. Everything from McHale's Navy to Mission Impossible, Perry Mason, Batman, Bewitched, That Girl, The Wild Wild West, you name it, he was in it.
Yeah.
He was just that prolific of a guy.
He's that journeyman kind of actor and underrated.
So underrated, and you've seen him in a million things and didn't realize it was him. Well, after the party, he worked constantly. He was in everything from Westworld in 1973 to up to Angels and Demons, 2009. And he was especially prolific in TV, as I mentioned. He went on and did The Rookies, Charlie's Angels, Kojak, Alice, One Day at a Time, The Love Boat, ER, Seinfeld, Law and Order. And And he was also, and I love this fact about him, he was also the second cousin of former Minnesota Senator and comedian Al Franken. Steve Franken died on August 24th, 2012 from cancer. And if you haven't seen The Party, do yourself a favor and watch it. I think it's free on Tubi TV. See if I'm not right about Steve Franken's scene-stealing ways. It is absolutely a treat.
Yes, I can't wait. Well, my last scene stealer is somebody that everybody knows, but I had to mention this one because it's sort of the start of something for this actress. Judy Holliday as Doris Attinger in Adam's Rib, 1949. She was born in New York City in 1921. The story goes that her mother was pregnant with her and she was watching a play and went into labor. So I think that's maybe why Holliday decided to be an actress.
It influenced her
right?
from the womb.
She appeared in several plays in high school. She eventually got a job with Orson Welles' Mercury Theater, but unfortunately it was as a switchboard operator.
Oh.
I know. She eventually found her way touring on a nightclub circuit in a group called The Reviewers, founded by Betty Comden and Adolph Green. And her first credited film role was in Winged Victory in 1944. Her Broadway debut was in Kiss Them For Me, 1945, where she received the Clarence Derwent Award for Most Promising Female Actress. And in what would become her most famous role, she was cast in the Broadway premiere of Born Yesterday in 1946 after Jean Arthur dropped out for personal reasons. We talked about that in a previous
That's
episode.
right.
Now, Judy Holliday would go on to star in the film version of Born Yesterday, but it was not a foregone conclusion. When it came time to make the movie, Columbia Studio Chief Harry Cohn didn't want Judy Holliday. He preferred bigger names. Garson Kanin and his wife, Ruth Gordon, both friends of Holliday's, happened to be the screenwriters for this little movie called Adam's Rib. So Kanin and Gordon enlisted director George Cukor and Katharine Hepburn to help Holliday's cause by casting her in a role in Adam's Rib and writing a part for her that would showcase her talents as an actress. And showcase her talents it does. But particularly, the one I want to talk about is the interview scene with Katharine Hepburn.
Yes.
I think you all know the movie. Adam and Amanda Bonner, Spencer Tracy, and Katharine Hepburn are this happily married attorney couple who land on opposite sides of the courtroom after Doris Attinger, Judy Holliday's character, is charged with the attempted murder of her abusive and philandering husband, Warren, played by Tom Ewell. Hepburn plays Judy Holliday's attorney. So she meets with her at the jail where Holliday's character is being held so that she can interview her about the particulars of the case. In the interview scene, it just shows the breadth and scope of Judy Holliday's immense talent. It is a 5-minute scene with no cuts.
Yep.
Cukor has placed Hepburn screen left. Her secretary, who's taking notes, is screen right. Holliday is at the apex. A very generous gift from Cukor and Hepburn, who she's essentially in profile for the entire scene. Again, as I said with Mildred Natwick, not a broad caricature, but a portrayal that begins with this subtle confusion, fear, and trembling. There are even some stories that Holliday was actually trembling because she was sitting opposite Katharine Hepburn. In a scene. I would be trembling.
Oh, me too.
As the story unfolds, Holliday imbues her character with a bit more confidence. She even has a little bit of swagger as we get toward the end. And she doesn't just speak to Katharine Hepburn. Her asides to the stenographer, which I feel certain that she instinctively came up with on her own, they create yet another act of humor combined with the serious nature of the crime, combined with the abuse that you hear that her husband has done to her, the longing for her children and home life. Again, a life that we as the audience don't ever see, but she paints this picture where we're able to see through her eyes, through her breath, through this heart that she has and her genius physicality, what her story really is. Anytime she's on screen, you just want her to do what she does, which is unexpected. And it's just one of the most original performances. I would also give a shout out in this film to David Wayne.
Yes.
Who plays Kip Lurie.
He's wonderful.
Yeah, he gets an honorable mention because he's the man who lives across the hall from Hepburn and Tracy, and he's trying to woo Hepburn away
I know,
from
trying to be
Tracy.
so suave.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's David Wayne.
I would just say, do yourself a favor, and if you've never seen the film, please watch it. If you have seen it, rewatch it. It's free on Tubi right now. You can find the interview scene with Judy Holliday and Katharine Hepburn on YouTube, and you will see the definition of comic brilliance. And by the way, as y'all probably know, the story of Judy Holliday getting to do the film version of Born Yesterday ends pretty pretty well. She not only plays the role,
Yeah, it does.
she's nominated for the Academy Award and the Golden Globe for Best Actress. She wins both. And as we've talked about, that was a really tough year.
I'm not even going to say it.
I know, don't say it. It was Gloria Swanson, Bette Davis, Eleanor Parker, and Ann Baxter, any one of whom could have won.
Yes.
Speaking of awards, Holliday also went on to win the Tony Award for the musical Bells Are Ringing, and she reprised her role in that film as well in 1960. And just 2 weeks before her 44th birthday, she died of breast cancer. The roles she could have played
I
if
know.
she had lived longer.
I think we're so deprived of what could have been,
Yes.
what we missed out on.
Yes.
I mean, she was a comic genius.
She really was.
Well, my last scene stealer, it's actress Madeline Sherwood. The name probably does not ring a bell with everybody. And most people my generation, they probably know her best playing the very stern but kindly Mother Superior in that far-fetched TV comedy, The Flying Nun, which ran from 1967 to 1970 and starred a pre-Oscar winning Sally Field. Sherwood had a huge impact on Sally Field when they worked together. In her 2018 autobiography, In Pieces, Field credits Sherwood for changing the course of her career because Madeline Sherwood is the one who took Sally Field to meet Lee Strasberg with the Actors Studio. And Sally said, had Madeline not guided me to Lee and the Actors Studio, I never would have become the actress that I did.
Wow.
And she credits Madeline Sherwood completely for the change in her career and the work she did as an actress and just studying and learning her craft, which I love that she did that.
Yes.
Madeline Sherwood was so much more than just a sitcom actress. I mean, she was this accomplished stage actress who was a favorite of Tennessee Williams. I mean, not too shabby. Williams cast her in 2 of his most famous plays on Broadway, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and Sweet Bird of Youth. In fact, she would go on to recreate both roles for the film version, a rare feat for any other actor. We've been talking about it a little bit in this episode.
Right.
When his Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, finally got turned into a feature film at MGM in 1958, it was no surprise that the producers brought Sherwood and Burl Ives back to play the roles they created on stage. Burl Ives, of course, portrayed Big Daddy, who was this arrogant, controlling patriarch of this proud Southern family who's dealing with mortality and his legacy. And then there's Sherwood. She plays the bitchy, shrill, manipulative daughter-in-law, May, who is nicknamed Sister Woman. And she is delicious. I mean, every move, every glance, every eye twitch is just perfection. She is basically the comic relief of the story. From her first appearance in the film, when she's becoming like this drill sergeant with her kids as they're marching around playing musical instruments and holding a big rebel flag, they're welcoming home Big Daddy at the airport, and she is the drill sergeant in charge. And to kind of help with the comedy, of course, Sister Woman is 8 months pregnant. So she waddles around with this big belly and this turned up pug nose and her shrilly voice, and she spreads her pettiness around like fertilizer, trying to suck up to Big Daddy because she wants to make sure that Big Daddy leaves his money to her and her husband Gooper, played by Jack Carson, who is Big Daddy's oldest and most responsible son. However, there is a fly in the ointment, and that fly is named Brick, played by Paul Newman. He is the younger son who has come back home with his sultry, fiery wife Maggie, played by Elizabeth Taylor. And despite Gooper and May doing absolutely everything right and just sucking up to Big Daddy every chance they get, and Big Mama, played by Judith Anderson, they've even provided 5 grandchildren and one on the way, so that Big Daddy can have a legacy. Big Daddy favors Brick, and it just boggles their minds because Brick is this faded football star who's now this unemployed alcoholic who battles his own demons that are kind of scaled back a little bit in the film version, but in the stage version, he's dealing with his sexuality.
Right.
But that definitely downplayed in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, the whole Brick situation infuriates Sister Woman, and she just feels that she and Gooper are entitled to Big Daddy's money, and she's going to make sure they get it. And the one thing that Sister Woman has over Maggie is her fertility.
Yes.
And she thinks that having all these babies just makes Big Daddy happy that they're providing him with, and this is a quote from her, a whole dynasty of his flesh and blood waiting to take over. Well, the irony is Big Daddy hates those kids. He calls them no-neck monsters and doesn't really give a crap about all these obnoxious fat grandchildren, which is kind of funny. Well, our pal John DeLeo, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago, in his wonderful book, Tennessee Williams and Company, His Essential Screen Actors, which was published in 2010, he wrote about Sister Woman. Her brown maternity dress has a big fat bow on her chest, making her fertility look as though it's been gift wrapped as a large present for Big Daddy's birthday. And I think that really sums up her motivation, too.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's just so much fun to watch her try to keep things together in front of Big Daddy and put on a brave front. And then behind his back, she just loses it and becomes this unhinged woman when Brick and Big Daddy start holing up in the basement to hash things out. And she becomes more and more vicious, and she swirls more and more out of control, blasting everybody who gets in her way. It is just incredible to watch. Watching Madeline Sherwood in this role is just like a masterclass in acting. There are just so many big performances in this movie.
Yes.
I mean, my God, Judith Anderson alone like eats the furniture.
Sure.
But to compete with that, you got to be pretty good.
Yeah.
And Madeline Sherwood does exactly that. She holds her own. In fact, she steals scenes from all these incredible people. And her character, she has so much nervous energy and this quiet indignation that you almost feel sorry for her. Almost. Because inevitably she will open her mouth and she will say something so bitchy and so manipulative that you're reminded, oh my God, she's such a scheming bitch.
Yeah, right.
So, the sympathy is very short-lived.
Yeah.
A little bit about Madeline Sherwood. She was born in Canada. She got her start in Canadian television before moving to New York in 1950, where she made her Broadway debut, replacing Kim Stanley in Horton Foote's play The Chase. And besides originating Sister Woman in Cat and Miss Lucy in Sweet Bird of Youth, she also originated the role of Abigail, the scorned teen who causes all the fury in Arthur Miller's The Crucible.
Oh, wow.
Which is another
I did not know that.
Incredible play, an incredible part. The Crucible ended up being a Tony Award-winning play. It was sort of an allegory of the McCarthy witch hunts in Hollywood.
Right.
Incredible theater pedigree from her.
Yes.
She also won a 1963 Obie Award for Hey You, Light Man, which was off-Broadway. She was a very liberal woman, and she was a big supporter of the civil rights movement in the 60s and also the women's movement. And she ended up being blacklisted in the 50s during the McCarthy era. And there's this incredible interview with the director, Dan Petrie Sr., who talks about directing an early television show after Madeline Sherwood had been blacklisted. And she came to him and she basically begged and just said, I'm broke. It's Christmas. I want to get home to my daughter in Canada. Can you please, please, please just give me anything? I'll be an extra in your TV show. Can you help me? And Petrie loved her and he thought she was a wonderful actress. He said, of course I'll help you. So he cast her as an extra, but he had to make sure that her face was away from the camera because people knew who she was.
Oh my goodness.
And, he didn't want
it would draw attention.
people to see, oh, there's Madeline Sherwood in this
Right.
extra scene. Well, things are going fine. And then all of a sudden, the sponsor of the TV show marches onto the floor and says, is that Madeline Sherwood on my set? And Petrie says, well, yes, it is. And he goes, get her off now. And, Petrie is so taken aback and he's so shocked and he tries to take up for her. But the sponsor of the show basically said, if you don't get her off the set, you will be replaced. And that's how serious the blacklist was. And that's what she had to endure as a blacklisted actress, which is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is.
The interview with him is just, you could tell it broke his heart as well.
Yeah.
But, despite this blacklisting, she remained true to her beliefs and her convictions. She remained active in the civil rights movement. She even marched with Martin Luther King Jr.'s Freedom Walk in Gadsden, Alabama, where she was actually arrested and jailed for, and this is the charges, and I love it, endangering the customs and mores of the people of Alabama. Can you imagine?
That's just horrific.
It's just horrific. She went on to be a very successful teacher at the Actors Studio. And in fact, there's this incredible 2010 short documentary about her life later teaching called Madeline's Method by Miriam Lawrence. It's available on YouTube. Really check it out. It's fascinating to see her as an older woman in the Actors Studio teaching these students.
To watch that, yeah.
So good. Sherwood died April 23rd, 2016 in her childhood home back in Quebec, Canada. No cause of death was disclosed and she's survived by her daughter. Incredible actress. Very underrated.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's time for the answer to this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz. Steve?
So the question was, who played Brick and Maggie in the original production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof on Broadway.
Barbara Bel Geddes.
That's right. Our little Miss Ellie from Dallas was the original Maggie the Cat on Broadway's Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Right.
And who played Brick?
Can't remember.
It's a good one, too. It was Ben Gazzara.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. And now the second part of the question was, who was originally supposed to star in the film version of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof as Brick? It was originally intended for James Dean, but his death prevented him from starring in the movie.
How interesting would that have been?
It would have been really an interesting choice, although part of me can't imagine anybody except for Paul Newman.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We would love it if you would give us a 5-star review, and if you would follow us on social media. Our handle is @FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and you can watch the podcast on YouTube.
And we love hearing from you, so please let us know who are your favorite scene stealers by emailing us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com.
That's this week's View.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Ann McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, and tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. Associate producer and researcher John Price Ritchie. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. That's a wrap.